right, we're going to get going here in about 30 seconds. We're expecting a little over 100 participants today, so we'll probably see a few more people come in. But again, welcome to those of you that are joining us today for our third wellness workshop presented by Dr. Michael Brown on cultivating relational connections. As a reminder to everyone that is joining us, we've got many familiar faces, I'm sure, but this is a webinar, so everyone will remain on mute during the webinar. So you don't have to worry about that, any problems with that. Also, your cameras are not on, so we don't see you. And that means if you do have questions for Dr. Brown about any of the topics that he's discussing today, please use the Q&A dialog box to submit those questions. Just press the Q&A button. You'll see it flash when questions come in. And you can submit a question there, or you can upvote or downvote the questions so we know which ones are a priority to the audience. I will run a few polls like we've typically done. The one for today is a wellness check like we've done with the other two, as well as an entry demographics poll and an exit survey. And finally, if you've got other comments to share or other questions for the different members and planners and general public people in attendance today, feel free to use the chat box, hit the chat button, open that up, and you can do that. Just a reminder though, when you do that, to try to send to all panelists and attendees, click the little drop down and change it so it goes to everyone instead of just the panelists, so everyone gets the benefit, both of your comments and the questions that you have. And with that, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Michael Brown to get us going with today's webinar.
Fantastic. I wish I think I've said this before, but I wish I could be sitting across from you having a cup of coffee at this point in time and not just staring into a screen, particularly as we talk today about the importance of relational connections. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to, who's actually in the room, I see 98 participants, if you've been a part of my other two discussions, but I have conceptualized, if you are familiar at this point, the 12 dimensions of a human being's life. And as a part of this wellness workshop and as a part of this commitment that Unique Venues has to self-care and to making sure that you're the best version of yourself, even personally and not just professionally, I as well share that passion in all 12 dimensions of your life, one of which is the professional dimension. But there are several others, 11 in fact, that encompass who we are as human beings. So this wellness conversation, this three-part series is focused on 3 of those 12 dimensions, the first of which was emotional well-being. Because obviously this is a time when there's a lot of anxiety in the air, and there's a lot of worry, and there's a lot of concern. And our emotional and your emotional well-being is of utmost importance, and how to manage emotions, and how to make sense of emotions, and how to express your emotions, and so forth. As well, physical vitality we talked about last week, which I thought was a dynamic, fun conversation where I actually had a little show and tell. I won't pull out my V8 at this particular webinar that's here below me and my jump rope, but to talk about how the physical dimension connects to all of the various dimensions of our life. And today, I am so pleased to be able to talk to you about the value and the significance and, quite honestly, the sacredness of genuine human connection. Because here's a reality, and I've said this for years, and I think for many professionals, it's resonated theoretically, but not in such a powerful, profound, and personal way as it does now, is this notion that at the end of our lives, there is only one thing that we're talking about, and that is the people in our world. The connections we have with human beings, the relationships that we have established. No one's talking about the next big deal, that amazing sale they made, their third boat or their second home. Nobody's mentioning any of those things. At the end of life, we are talking about the thing that we most crave every day, whether we acknowledge it in the highest level of our consciousness or if it's buried deep within, and that is we long for genuine human connection. And I think we feel this more than ever before right now, when there is this notion of social distancing, physical distancing, you can call it whatever you want, but we are craving human connection. In fact, there's been some interesting research already coming out, and I may have mentioned this previously, this notion of social yearning, that even the most introverted among us are longing for deep human connection. When I say deep human connection, this is what I mean. To be in those relationships where we are fully known and unconditionally loved at the same time. If there is ever a time when you need to be drawing near and investing energy in relationships where you can be fully known and unconditionally loved, it is now. It's all that matters. I shouldn't say that it's all that matters. It's what most matters. It's what most matters. Meaning this, that there are individuals in your life that know everything about you, that you are fully transparent with and vulnerable with, and love you unconditionally despite that. And oftentimes, in fact, I recently did a conference entitled Known, Establishing Genuine Friendship in a Shallow World. And it was a weekend conference because, again, there's this craving to be fully known and unconditionally loved. See, what happens when you are, imagine if you are fully known but not unconditionally loved. It feels like rejection, right? But the contrary is also devastating. Imagine being unconditionally loved without being fully known. It feels shallow. It feels surfacey. And so if ever there's a time when we should be leaning in and having significant, in fact, we talked about cultivating relational connections. It is now. It is now. It was interesting. I've been doing a lot of webinars and a lot of conversations with clients and in a variety of different populations across the nation. And I've been talking about the 5 W's recently, the who, what, where, when, why of the pandemic. And we won't spend time talking about that in detail now, but the most important W is the who. Who are you walking with through this time? And I loved even some of the questions. I'm not sure if you've popped those up yet, Joel, where you can actually check off the things that you're doing, the activities you're doing during this COVID-19. Has that already been presented to them at this point?
Not yet. It's coming up in just a couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, and it's amazing as they starts coming up, in many ways, that could be the whole entire panel. And that could be, it's going to be the entire webinar, in the sense that we need to be creative in what it looks like to connect and how to make those connections. I was thinking about the Spanish flu, 1918, I believe, and just this notion of how did people stay connected? Because you didn't know a mile away how your family or your friends were doing. And now today we have all of this at our disposal, this technology, this ability to pick up a phone. I'm a little older, so I remember the Jetsons cartoon, right? And remember watching the Jetsons and going, could this actually happen someday where you could actually look at someone while talking on the phone? And indeed, it has become a reality. But yet we're more isolated and more distant from each other than ever before. We're incredibly connected without being connected. We are connected without being a community. And so I just want to implore all of us, the 126 that are sitting here and participating in this conversation today, to make sure that this is a time when you are focused on the who. Who are you going to journey with during this time? Who do you want to reconnect with? I've actually been dealing with and interacting with a few clients that are saying, I'm using this time to repair relationships. They know those relationships that have been strained and those relationships that have been challenging in my life. I'm using this time, I'm investing this time to repair those relationships, to say the 10 most important words in the English language, which are, I was wrong, and I am sorry, and will you forgive me? What an incredible, can you imagine coming out of the pandemic, actually having repaired and dealt with the challenges and resolved conflict in some of those difficult relationships, that we would let nothing go unsaid. And I guess that's my encouragement even for us today, as you think about cultivating relational connections. I could talk about this for hours, but one of the key things that need to happen is that we need to learn to talk to each other in a way that is affirming and appreciative, not disingenuously, but think about this. I want you to think about in terms of every time, say for instance, every time you had a positive thought about someone, every time that you actually appreciated something about someone, that you would, within the next 24 hours, reach out and actually express that appreciation and communicate that affirmation. Can you imagine what that would do to a company, to an organization, to a family? to a social network, we tend to be reserved. We tend to not understand, maybe we understand, but we tend not to embrace what I would consider to be the 5 relational ingredients that make fantastic human connection. And so I'm going to share those with you now, and hopefully they're easy to remember. And I know there's a handout that will go out to everyone here in the next few days or a week after this that will have all of this content in a handout that you can use and utilize for future reference and reflection. But here are the 5 T's, the first of which is time. I don't know what you're feeling right now as you think about your professional world, but I'm guessing for most of us, we have a little more time than we once did before. A little more margin, maybe. Now, if we're living all the way to the edge of the paper still, that could be a challenge. I would encourage you not to be working so much that you have no boundaries now in this stay-at-home, shelter-in-place kind of environment. But I'm guessing we have more opportunities. I know I do, and I live a very fast-paced life, but it's been so interesting to realize I can invest 5 minutes right now to pick up the phone spontaneously and FaceTime a person and simply tell them I'm thinking about them, to ask them how are they doing really. It's an investment of time. It's a decision to invest time. And what a better investment than in human beings, right? Second ingredient would be talking. So there is investment of time. We need to take time. We need to take the initiative to reach out, but also talking, communication, dialogue. Oh, and that's where it gets back to the transparency piece. And that's where it gets back to the vulnerability and being fully known. Let's make sure when we're talking, particularly now, that it's about real things. Like not about just the weather or our favorite sports team, which at this point in time, it's kind of hard to do anyways, because there are no sports. And so to be able to actually talk about things, and I'm seeing this, I'm feeling this, I crave this, and I teach this, and I mentor in this. But even in my neighborhood, when we have our 10 feet apart or 15 feet apart conversation as we kind of mingle with the neighborhood, people are actually just going there and having real conversations that matter. Time, talking, togetherness is the third T, the third ingredient for fantastic relationships. Togetherness, meaning that we're actually creating memories, that we are spending time together. And I think some of has that survey gone out yet, Joel? So you can see here, calling, cooking, delivering food supplies, doing drive-by birthday parties. I mean, there are memories being built. I have 2 seniors in high school right now. It was just determined there will be no graduation ceremony. There will be a graduation caravan where every senior will be in a car. Now I have 2 seniors, so that means we have 2 cars. My wife drives 1 car because they don't want more than 1 person in a car, more than 1 senior for social distancing, right? Physical distancing. But we're going to drive through, and then we're going to pick up our diploma at a certain spot. And we're going to pick up we have to be creative, but we're creating togetherness. We're memory making. That's what makes fantastic human connection. So even now, you even have an opportunity to note here as a part of just this survey, things that you can do to build and create memories together. I have a dear friend who's in Atlanta, and his one child said to them recently, "Dad," I think she's probably 10, "there's nothing to look forward to anymore." So he and his wife, they created a 30-day calendar, 30 days of surprises. And they went ahead and covered all 30 days in this big calendar they created. And every day you pull off the Post-it note and see what is the surprise for today that you can look forward to. Again, it's togetherness. It's being creative. It's being innovative. We are genius human beings that can get to the moon and create organizations. And for many of us connected to youth venues, creating events and experiences are amazing, right? We can figure this thing out. But we have to keep at the front of our consciousness this notion that human connection is the most important thing. Now, some of you who have been with me in a variety of speaking, face-to-face speaking environments have heard me say this, and I'm going to say it right here and right now. And that is this: it's sad to me that for many of us, we spend the first 60 years of our life marginalizing relationships, sidelining true connection for the purpose of career and making money. And then around 60, 70 years old, we start spending all of our money and trying to invest back to gain back those relationships. Why not be connected to those human beings each step of the way and not allow ourselves to be distracted by only one of the 12 dimensions, which is professional, when there's this huge other part of us to be connected together. So again, time, talking, togetherness, two more things. Transparency. Not just talking, but actually pulling back the mask. Pulling back the mask and saying, I'll let you see me. My secrets, my struggles, my storms, my scars, I'm going to be fully known. And I'm going to interact in the world fully known. And I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be vulnerable. And I'm going to actually be able to connect deeply. Because if we're not transparent, if you're not pulling back the mask, if you're not pulling back the curtain on your life and letting people look behind the curtain, backstage, if I can use that metaphor for those theater folks, it's going to be deeply hard. It's going to be very challenging to cultivate strong, meaningful relational connections. The final one is trust. You know, we really want to trust each other. I actually had someone recently say to me, how do I know when I can trust someone? My response was, when you trust them. See, oftentimes we wait for this moment, this magical moment, right? Where I know I can trust a person. In many ways, why not trust them and see how it goes? Now, for some of you are thinking, I would never do that. That's too risky. Love is risky business. Human connection at times is painful. But the fear of rejection oftentimes keeps us from cultivating these meaningful relational connections. And I realize there could be a risk. But it's a risk for me I'm willing to take because I want to be fully alive. During this time, I don't just want to be living. I don't just want to be breathing. I want to be fully alive in order to achieve my fullest and most amazing potential. And that begins and ends with human connection. So those are my thoughts. Just right now, I'm going to hit pause. Joel, is there any questions? I don't see the chats. I see there's been 20 comments before me, but I don't see exactly what those are. I can pull them up.
You can. So right now, it's just all
there we
people
go.
saying hi and where they're from. So
Hello, everyone.
We don't have any open questions as of the moment.
Okay.
Just a reminder, folks, if you do have a question for Michael, just open that Q&A window and type it in, and we'll get them answered. But go ahead and keep sharing with us this morning.
Well, you know, and I will. I'll continue on. I always have so much to say in this regard, but, you know, we've heard it a lot said in recent days that we're all in this together, right? That is theoretical. You are as close to human beings today as you choose to be. So I'm not in this with you, and you're not in this with me if we're not connected. Just by saying we're all in this together. You know how we're all in this together? By sharing our stories with each other, by making that phone call, by doing the drive-by. You know, one of the things I'm doing is when I'm so extroverted. If you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, I'm like 99% on the extroverted scale. And so I literally am taking an hour and saying, I'm just going to drive over to 3 friends' houses right now in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I'm going to pull in front of their home, and I'm just going to beep on my horn. And I'm going to stand in the driveway or stand on the sidewalk, and they come out, and we're going to have a conversation. There's ways to do this. There's ways to do this. We've got to be creative. We've got to be innovative. We've got to use our imaginations. But at the end of all of this, I want to be able to say, yeah, I was in this together with my people. I've been saying a lot. I've been actually framing a lot of these conversations around this idea that I want to be smart and I want to be selfless, but I don't want to be scared during this time. That's kind of my little mantra right now. To survive the pandemic in a healthy way, I want to be smart. I want to wear my mask. You like those polka dots? I like to wear my mask. I'm going to be smart about what I do. I'm going to be selfless. I'm going to be thinking more about others than myself. I want to walk into every space and I want to be interacting with every person more interested in them than being interesting to them. I want to be a life giver. So I want to be smart. I want to be selfless, but I don't want to be scared. Because fear robs me of the joy of this day. And it does nothing to help me become the best version of myself or even prepare for what may lie ahead later tonight or tomorrow. And so I want to be selfless. I want to be a life giver. Life giver for me is actually an acrostic. And here's what they are: LIFEGIVER. And this is the person who every time you interact with them, you're feeling that they are loving, intentional, fun, expressive, generous, inquisitive, vulnerable, enthusiastic, and responsive. I want to be a life giver. I want to be able to have a full cup to pour out into these relationships, because at the end of all of this, I may not get as many projects done as I was hoping. I'm really trying. I've been super focused, establishing a routine, doing all the things, but let's just be honest, this is hard, right? This is hard. It's tough work, and it's only going to get tougher as things progress, because it just gets long and it gets hard. But for success for me at the end of all of this will be a result of the fact that I can say with honesty and integrity, I am more connected to human beings than I ever have been before. That's what it means to truly be alive during this time. Yes, emotional well-being. Yes, physical vitality, but also that human connection, that relational dimension of your life, right? The relational dimension of your life, that it is robust and vibrant, even during this time. Those are my thoughts. I'm looking here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing the results of the survey here.
The results just popped up. So you can see that we've got a lot of people that feel like they're seeing an increase in the quality of their interactions with the people
Wow,
around
that's awesome.
them. But a few people that are struggling a little bit with a decrease, because there's a lot going on and trying to manage homeschooling and work and all the different things that come with everyone being at home. And so there's that. But, again, it looks like people are engaged in a lot of different activities around continuing to build those relationships with people, which is great to see.
And just keep in mind that it's a mixture of all those ingredients. So it's not just the togetherness, and it's not even just the talking and the communication. In the midst of that, it's putting all those pieces together. It's an investment of time, of course, talking and communication and memory making and cooking and all those things. But also it's that transparency and trust to be able to say to someone, you know what, I'm really afraid today. I'm not doing that well. I've been more worried than usual. I'm not sleeping well at night. Or whatever the case, like to be able to have those conversations, because obviously there's a lot. I mean, you think about a typical crisis. It's like I'm dealing with this health issue, but we're in the middle of a pandemic right now where we're dealing with health issues coupled with relational distance, coupled with professional uncertainty, a disruption of our routines and rhythms that have helped us feel normal and balanced and ourselves. All of these things are disjointed and out of step all at the same time, which is why I talk a lot about the 12 dimensions of a human being's life, because any choices or disruptions across any of those 12 dimensions tends to touch all these other areas of my life as well. Human beings are not as compartmentalized as we would hope to be. I mean, I'd love to open the filing cabinet and shut the filing cabinet on professional and open this, but I'm a blackboard and you can kind of see it all. So Joel, I see you're about to say something there.
Yeah, there are a couple questions that kind of tie into this, I think, because
Fantastic.
A couple people have asked questions around, what if you can't forgive someone because what they've done is so hurtful and you really believe they're at fault? Or how do you start to have a conversation to rebuild relationships, like you're talking about using this time to do that, where trust was broken on both sides? How do you go about breaking that down and getting started on that journey?
That's another whole seminar, but I will say this much, that forgiveness is 100% in your control. Reconciliation is a shared concept. Okay? So I can 100% decide I'm going to forgive you regardless of whether you apologize, regardless of whether there's remorse or regret or whatever. I can choose to forgive you. In fact, when I forgive someone who seems at times unforgivable, and I've counseled thousands of people on this topic, when you are unforgiving and you choose unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. Forgiveness is a gift to yourself. Now, I may offer forgiveness and my conscience is clear. I can take a deep breath and I feel a little less heavy. But am I going to continue to interact with you if there's still those toxic behaviors and those dysfunctional interactions? Probably not. I'm going to draw a line. We're not going to reconcile until we begin to work those things out. But I think the first step is to simply say, I forgive you. Now, in many ways, you might need to do that over and over again. But see, here's the thing is oftentimes we're waiting. We think forgiveness is a 50-50 proposition. I'm going to come this way and see if you come a little way. I'm going to come this way. And we keep kind of coming toward each other. But if I only go 49% and you only go 48%, we're still never going to connect. My forgiveness of you, I want it to go all the way past the 50 yard line. And and then what happens is there's opportunity. But it goes back to risk, because if I start saying, I miss you, or I'm sorry, and you don't respond, do it for yourself, not for them. But I will say this much, particularly now during this shelter in place, we're hearing more and more challenges in regards to relationships that were already unhealthy. They don't get healthy because of the pandemic. Shelter in place doesn't help an unhealthy relationship, or even it doesn't take away all the pain of maybe distant relationships. That those things need to be talked about, right? Those things need to be worked through, and that takes time. But we have the time now, and we have the opportunity. Like, this is what's reminding. At the end of the day, at the end of our lives, we're gonna want to know inside of us, we gave it our best effort. And you're right. There are some of you that have gone through such pain in relationships and such difficulty, maybe professionally, from a colleague or a supervisor or a CEO or however that goes. But forgiveness is a gift to yourself.
That's great. We have a couple minutes left, and we usually run a few minutes over on these anyways.
Yeah.
So there was one of the things I found interesting, and I included the question actually in the poll, was one of the lowest responded ones that people are saying they're doing right now is finding creative ways to show appreciation, affection for my partner, spouse, significant other. And of course, I would totally acknowledge I'm probably as guilty of that as everyone else, because right now we're all just trying to keep things together. And so what advice do you have for people that are trying to balance managing a household, managing school, all that stuff,
It's
and
hard.
still be appreciative of that very important person in your life, that one special significant other, that's trying to do the same thing at the same time? How do you balance that? How do you find time maybe to carve out something to show appreciation and affection for that person?
Again, there's so much there. Where could I even begin? I will say that there's been I saw something recently on social media that says my wife and I have just started a new game during the quarantine. It's called Why Do You Do Things That Way? And the sad thing is there's no winners ever to this new game that we've developed. So again, I think there's part of it. And again, I've said this in a variety of even marriage enrichment, romance enrichment coaching I do, is that the very thing that we fall in love with a few years in becomes the most annoying thing about the other person. And I think it's just those that we're closest to, we tend to take for granted. So part of it, I can't change the other person. I can only change me. So my goal is not to say, why are you acting that way? My goal, because if we're honest, most of the, like even now, if you're thinking, man, I'm kind of distant right now, like we're not doing real well in the home, this romantic other and this significant other, typically we're thinking to ourselves, if that person would just change, or if that person would stop doing this or start doing this, we'd be happier. Don't even go there. Think about who can I become and what choices can I make? And here's the cool part. To give those choices away, to make those investments, to share appreciation regardless of their response, and not expecting kickback as a result. It goes back to what I shared earlier. Every encounter being more interested in others than being interesting to others, being appreciative of others more than being appreciated by others. And what happens over time is that begins to create a really dynamic thing. But it's a real thing. I actually had someone talk about that in their vows before they got married. It was for richer or for sickness and in health, and in wealth or in poverty. But they're like, there is nothing said about at work or sheltered at home. Had I known that, I would not have. We need to include those in future vows, right? Because there's something so hard about this stuff. when we're just all in the same place. And I think we just need to work. So for me, even it takes a good 5-10 minutes in the morning before I even walk out of my bedroom to be mindful, to meditate, and to think, who will I be today? Who will I be today? And make those choices. I can only control me. Great question. Those are real things. These are real challenge. I appreciate you being vulnerable and transparent and sharing those.
You bet. One last question I think that's great, and then we'll wrap up. Someone pointed out a bias in my world because I have a family around me. And so some of the questions about activities were obviously skewed towards a environment of people with families and close friends. Someone asked the question, what about people that live alone? What are some of the people that live alone right now? What can they be doing to help think about cultivating relationships and kind of maintaining their own, self-satisfaction with having to be a little bit more isolated and not having those things immediately around?
Well, you think about these stories I just shared and realize that in many ways, for those of you who are alone, you can reach out and connect with someone, but when you're tired of them, you just hit end call. For others of us, we don't get to do that, right? You don't get to say end call on the 6-year-old that's running around or end call on the spouse of 25 years. Anyway, I'm joking, but there's a reality of that. Even some of the suggestions that were put in the poll, this idea of happy hours at 5 o'clock with friends, just like this, right? There's been some new, I've seen game nights where you can actually log in and play Settlers and Monopoly and various things right online with your friends. And there's some ways that you can begin to do that. And actually more often than even when you had the opportunity to do it in person. We're creating and we're thinking and rethinking some of these things, which is just extraordinary to me. But I would say, part of it is choosing to be content wherever you are. There's a joke in the counseling world in which I travel a fair amount that when you're single, you're just dying to be married. And when you're married, you're dying to have kids. And when you're married with kids, you're dying to be single. So we tend to always want to be someone we're not. The grass is always greener where you water it. And so in many ways, it's acknowledging those things. And again, it's choosing in the midst of being alone, or at least living in a space alone, to know that I'm living in this space alone, but because of all this technology and all the opportunities I have, that I can actually choose not to be lonely. I might be living alone, but I don't need to be lonely. That in some ways, loneliness is a choice. I'm as close to people as I choose to be today. So I think I mentioned this in the first webinar, but again, if you follow me on social media, on Instagram at DMB Coaching, or even Twitter, DMB Coaching, that will help you to be able to, every day I'm talking about these kinds of things and helping us as professionals and as people just kind of journey. And I'm figuring out as I go as well. This is really a challenging time. I made a commitment, in fact, to my friends. We've all made the commitment together that when we ask how we're doing, no one anymore is allowed to say good, because it's a lie. No one is doing good. This isn't good. Now, I might be doing well in the midst of a not a good situation, but we're training ourselves to be transparent and honest and vulnerable. And that's where deep connection takes place. This isn't good. This is hard. But through this pain and through this trial and through this, if I can use the word suffering, right? Though we are all suffering at different levels depending on a variety of things, we only grow through times like these. When life for me is going perfectly well, I am mediocre at best. And with that, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Michael Brown, for doing this series of wellness workshops. We really appreciate it. I'm really quickly going to share again. I know some people are dropping off. If you haven't done the evaluation survey yet, please do that. If not, I'm going to swing back here really quick, and it's that one. And just remind everyone that we have more webinars ahead. We get the screen to advance here.
Michael, can you repeat your Instagram?
Absolutely. It's DMB Coaching. So Dr. Michael Brown Coaching. That's my website as well, dmbcoaching.com. DMB Coaching on Instagram. We can watch live events, stories, quotes. DMB Coaching. I think it's Dr. Michael S. Brown on Twitter. But again, the handout you'll receive has all of those things, including my cell number. And you're welcome to reach out to me at any point.
And I just want to remind everybody before Joel goes on that all of the recordings of all of our webinars, including this one, can be found at uniquevenues.com/resources. Sometimes it takes about 24 hours, sometimes before they're up there. So if you don't see this one till tomorrow, that's why. But one by one, they get posted. And please feel free to, we try to keep these available to people who are in our industry. So if you know anyone, you don't have to be a member, a venue, or a planner that uses our services. We invite everyone in from our industry family to come and learn and join together at a time like this so that we all, regardless of your status with Unique Venues, we all emerge on the other side a little healthier and a little bit more focused than before.
Absolutely. And as you can see, we've got a great series of webinars continuing to go on here. So we've got a next level series, which is really kind of the marketing and sales part of what we do at Unique Venues. So we'll be talking business plans on April 28th, marketing strategies on May 14th, and digital advertising on May 20th. But we've also got a unique series, which again strays a bit beyond the normal marketing and sales approach. Similar to the way the wellness workshops have. Universal Design on April 30th will be a conversation about how to apply universal design standards to meetings and events. The May 5th will be on Generation Z, how to market to and hire this latest wave of society. And Dr. Michael Brown, again, will help inspire us with some leadership strategies. May 13th, we're thinking some people might be transitioning back to a work at work environment or thinking about doing so, which will disrupt all of our lives once again. And Dr. Brown's going to help us think through how we can motivate our teams and keep everyone calm and stable as we go through another disruptive transition in our lives. So again, these are all free to anyone. We upped our capacity so that we can handle lots of registrations and lots of attendance. Please make sure you do that. We'd love to have you join us for any of them, especially our expert panel on May 6th. So just head to the website there at the bottom, www.uniquevenues.com/resources, and you can find the links to sign up for all of these things. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you one last time to Dr. Michael Brown for putting on an excellent wellness series. People will get the copy of the poll results and the PDF from Dr. Brown as soon as his team puts it together and sends it to me, and I'll send it out to everyone that was registered for this workshop. So thanks. Oh, go ahead, Chuck. Unmute yourself.
I want to say one more thing. I've been seeing a lot of messages out there just to people who are in Canada and specifically Nova Scotia. And some people, I think, were sending them, they thought everyone could see them, but they were only to panelists. So I just want the folks on here from Nova Scotia and from Canada in general to know that there are a lot of people on here expressing their heartfelt condolences to those of you who experienced, in addition to this health crisis we're in, the tragedy that touched everyone's lives in Atlantic Canada and the rest of Canada, and frankly, all of us here in the United States. We're family, and our hearts go out to all of you in what it is that you're dealing with on all sides of things, but now this newest tragedy. So we're all with you. So
thanks, Chuck. And again, thanks everyone for attending. And we will see you on a, oh, I was having a problem here. All right. Can you hear me? Okay. We will see you all on a future webinar with Unique Venues. Thanks and have a great day.
bye, everyone.